Recording in progress.
#21st, 2022 City Commission meeting. Today is solstice, so it's the shortest day of the year. That means it's going to start getting dark, lighter, later, minute by minute. All right, let's do the roll call.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Adam Morrow.
Here.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Here.
Mayor Denise McGriff.
Present. All right, would everyone please stand and join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we do not have any ceremonies and proclamations tonight, which I'm sure you're all shocked by, but we do have an interview, and I'd like to call up Tim Powell. So we are interviewing for the Historic Review Board. We have a position that is vacant, that is for a McLaughlin neighborhood resident. Does Tim have a copy of the questions? And let's make sure that the red light or the green light or the whatever light it is that's on over there.
Yes, it's green.
Perfect. All right. So thank you for coming in, Tim, and we appreciate the fact that you were able to make this particular interview, and we appreciate that. So we have a series of questions which you have in front of you, and we will go down the rank here. So Mr. O'Donnell, would you like to start out, please?
Evening, Tim.
Evening, Frank.
First question, as you see it in front of you, is why are you applying for a position on the Historic Review Board?
Well, I've been here in Oregon City for 30 years, and throughout that time, I kind of got interested in the history of it when we first bought the house. But I joined the Old Home Forum, and started to get involved with a lot of the neighbors who had older homes, and I got very interested in that. Started working through that, got involved with the Neighborhood Association. Then I got involved with the City Commission as City Commissioner. At that point, I got to get real involved with a lot of the decisions that were made regarding our historic properties, and I enjoyed that very much. Then got involved with the Planning Commission for quite a few years, and was even more involved in development and design and things like that. And after I was finished with the Planning Commission, I got involved with the, I was on the board of the Clackamas County Historical Society, excuse me. And then I became president of that society and very much enjoyed it, got very involved in the history of Oregon City. And since then, I have stayed involved with the neighborhood associations and things along those lines. But I'm very interested in the HRB because I think it's nice to talk about being a historic city, but if you have the opportunity as a citizen to make some inroads and to be able to make sure that we, as a city, don't just talk about it, but in fact, make sure that our properties are maintained properly, that we stick to the historic structure, the historic criteria of our properties and the districts. You know, I've watched HRB for many years, and I thought it'd be interesting to be involved.
Very good, thank you.
All right, the next question is, what is your background in historic preservation?
I work on my house a lot. No, I kid you. I do, but really it's basically what I just said. It was historic involvement with the City Commission, Planning Commission, and Historic Society.
Isn't your house isn't it the Sturgis house?
Sorry?
Isn't your house the Sturgis house?
It is the Sturgis house.
And I thought it was what, circa 1920 something or other? 1918
to 1920.
So Tim, how do the criteria, standards, and design guidelines assist the public and applicants to know what they can and cannot do with their historic properties?
Well, it's interesting because when I first moved here, I had no idea I was in a historic neighborhood. I had no idea what that meant. And that's one of the things that I think we as a city could do a lot better, especially as people are coming into town, whether it's work with realtors or when people move into town, send them letters that show and talk to them about what they can and can't do. It's nothing more frustrating to have somebody come in and put all new windows in your house and realize that they aren't wood windows and you can't have them. So I think it's important that people, people that come to town or people that are here understand what the rules and regulations are. And if you don't know what those are, have it easily accessible. And I think it's becoming more and more accessible. So I think that's, first of all, what needs to be done. And I think once people realize what they have, I think planning, I think the city has been really good, especially Christine, in actually being able to talk to people and letting them know what they can and can't do with their historic properties.
I will say, just as you are aware, since you live in a historic house, we are still getting the yearly notices that the city puts out when they update the ownership rolls, and they send that out to everybody that has a designated building or is within a district. So we still have that. They've also put out another handout that says, what does this mean, which is available. It's online. I think one of the things that you probably noticed is that many of the realtors that have been in our neighborhood for the last 25, 30 years are now retiring. They knew our area intimately, and we have a lot of new realtors that are coming into Oregon City. They don't know Oregon City, and that's been one of my pet peeves, is that how do we educate the real estate community to help them understand what that means and not sort of leave that off of the listings. And there's a house right down the street from me right now that doesn't mention at all in the information that it's on the city's inventory, which is a little frustrating. So, Adam.
I agree.
Mr. Powell, and you've already answered this a little bit, but have you previously served on an appointed board? If so, what was the most rewarding part of the position and what was the most frustrating part?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Yes, I've served on many boards, as I said. The most rewarding was to be able to, when I was on the city commission, to be able to participate with the community and with the neighborhoods and talk to people in the city and understand their needs and their concerns. And that was actually both in the city commission and the planning commission. I felt it was very important to get out and shake hands. And unfortunately, and I guess the unfortunate part of that is I kind of watched my kids grow up behind me because I was always at meetings. So that was a little frustrating for me because they were pretty young at the time. But I think in the long run, my daughter's talking about running in politics now, so I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not a good thing, but they both learned that, if you want to participate in what's happening around you, you need to volunteer. So that was an important part of it. Frustrating part of it is, the rules that are made. Some of the rules are made by, like the state, especially in a planning environment. It might be good for one place, but it's not so good for the other place. And so to be able to manage that, to be able to manage development from people who want to get in, get out, and leave, versus people that we want to have in there and the types of homes we want and the types of developments we're looking for, that was always frustrating. And I guess the time it takes to get it done, that was probably the most frustrating in all those roles.
Okay, next, how would you approach a potentially contentious hearing, knowing that there are passionate opinions on both sides of the issue?
Well, the obvious answer to that question is listening to both sides. You have to be open. You can't have your mind made up when you walk in the room. I think it's critical that you give everybody the opportunity to talk. Everybody who's involved obviously has a need involved. So, the more you understand, the more you talk to people, the more you'll be able to develop an answer and a positive answer for the city. Because that's really comes down to, you don't make decisions for people, you make decisions for the city and the people of the city.
Thank you.
All right. What do you believe is the role of the HRB and the role of neighborhood associations as it relates to HRB decisions?
Well, the role of the HRB is to carry out the column rules and regulations, if you will, of the historic districts. We need to be able to let people know why things can't be done, or, what can we do to make it fit within those guidelines. The guidelines are important, everybody needs them, and I think that's what HRB is there to do. We've had some excellent people in HRB, and I've met many of them over the years. That's the one thing that we've been consistent with in this city. We've always been open to different conversations, and we've always been able to work with people typically to get things done. So that's important. As it relates to the neighborhood associations, gosh, I've been a chair of the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association 3 different times over about 8 years. So again, it's communication, and there are times when HRB membership may have to show up at a neighborhood meeting, or should show up at a neighborhood meeting to talk about the potential that a decision will make to their neighborhood. And I think if you don't be open and honest with the neighborhoods, that's really where the folks are, and especially in Kenema and McLaughlin and some of those areas where most of the historic properties are.
So what can we tell you that we haven't already talked about?
Not really a lot. I'm pretty familiar with HRB. I mean, I've been involved in many different aspects of it, so I'm pretty comfortable with the need and with the role that would require and the time commitment.
Perfect. Gentlemen, any other parting questions? Okay. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. So, gentlemen, what's your pleasure?
I would move to appoint Tim Powell to the Historic Review Board.
Second.
I'll second it as well. So it's been moved and seconded.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Morrow,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell,
Aye.
Mayor Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Motion passes.
So Tim, as he walks out the door.
No, he even knows.
Yeah,
Yeah, let him know.
yeah.
You're on.
It's over.
Report for work.
So that's okay, that's okay. So you were the only applicant we had for the neighborhood, for the McLaughlin Conservation District position. So we have voted to appoint you, so that will happen in January at their meeting, which will be the fourth Tuesday of the month, and you'll get sworn in.
Okay.
All right.
And tell me again the date?
What is the date specifically, Jacob? I don't have my calendar up.
I believe it will be the 24th of January.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that because
Okay, we'll talk later. Okay.
Great. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Again, have a
thank you for
wonderful holiday.
applying. Yep, thank you very much. Hey, if you have any notes on your sheets, hand them over.
Oh, no. Where did I put it? I just folded it up.
You folded it up nicely.
I did. There you go.
And we'll hand those off to Mr. Wiley before the end of the meeting. All right, thank you so much, Commissioners. So next on our agenda is the citizen comments, and we have some people here from Barker Avenue who would like to speak. So, James, come on up. And just state your name and city of residence for the record.
My name is James Farley, and I live in Oregon City. Before I begin my comments, I actually want to thank the commissioners, you, Mayor, Chief Band, and John Lewis for your public service. It's been much appreciated. I know it's end of the year, so thank you for your last year of service.
Thank you.
I'm speaking on behalf of the residents of Barker Avenue, representing all of them. I'm not the only one here this evening. There are a few other people that want to speak. And then I've submitted some written comments from some residents who are traveling for the holidays. For many months, the residents of Barker Avenue have endured a horrific traffic situation that's been enhanced by the closure of South End Road. The Barker Avenue is classified as a connector, but it's not a main arterial. It has no sidewalks, bicycle lanes, shoulder to accommodate parking. It's simply not a major arterial, yet it's become a throughway. It serves as the main walking and bicycle route for its families, for elderly, for people walking pets and children. It also serves these same purposes for neighboring connecting streets, the Deerbrook neighborhood, Clearbrook, Barker Road, and many others that use that street for pedestrian access. So since the closure of South End Road, the traffic situation has simply become a nightmare for the residents on the road. It's unbearable. The traffic volumes are in excess of 200 cars an hour, sometimes during the day. There's constant excessive speeding, reckless driving, commercial traffic, and people ignoring detour signs, local access only signs, stop signs being, you'll hear from others about stop signs being run, but there's only one stop sign between the sort of abutting ends of Barker Avenue. We sought the assistance of the Oregon City Police and the Department of Public Works to address the situation. They were extremely helpful and engaging. Pursuant to those discussions and having over 80% of the residents sign a petition for speed humps, temporary humps were installed a few weeks ago. Yet in spite of installing those humps and a couple of police enforcement blitzes, the problems remain unabated. In some cases, it's actually created new problems. Cars driving down the middle of the road to straddle humps so that they can go through them faster, or speeding around other cars so they don't have to wait to go over the cars that are slowing down to go over the humps. You'll hear from some others about some potential injury accidents that have been averted, but simply not safe. The repair of South End is currently projected to extend through the middle of 2023, if not beyond. Further heavy use of Center Street up the same hill has made it evident that road will require closure and repair as well in the near future, further promulgating the need for traffic detours and impacting Barker Avenue. So the residents of Barker are here to ask for the following: immediate installation of stop signs at all intersections along Barker Avenue between South End Road and Telford, which is replicating the traffic control along Sharman Street, which is the continuation of Barker between Telford and Lynn. For routine enforcement of all the traffic laws in this corridor. For signage indicating strict enforcement of these laws. Retention of the speed humps during the duration of the South End repair and any closure of Center Street. And lastly, to provide an assessment to add sidewalks for pedestrian safety in this corridor. It's not reasonable for the people who live on Barker Avenue to expect that they're taking their lives in their hands to simply walk out their door to get their mail, and that's the situation. People are just living in fear because of the constant speeding and the volume of traffic. I've submitted written comments already for what I just said and for some others. I don't know if you had any questions.
Any questions? No. All right. Aubrey and Terrence, you guys want to come up at the same time? And then same sort of instructions, so just, even though I said your name, I didn't say your whole name, so.
Terrence Gleason, Oregon City resident.
Is it on?
It's on green.
Okay, just get it a little closer.
Terrence Gleason, Oregon City resident.
Aubrey Humphreys, Oregon City resident.
Okay.
So we've been Oregon City residents for about 4 years now. Been a very peaceful neighborhood up until the closure of Barker Road. And then basically as soon as the closure on South End, traffic has just blown up. And we really thank you guys for hearing us tonight and the police for all your work with the patrols. But there have been several instances where we can't even walk the dogs on the road anymore because we're afraid to get hit by oncoming traffic, even though we're in the correct lane and observing. And there have been 3 or 4 instances where we're driving the speed limit, cars are passing us in oncoming lanes of traffic, cutting us off, and then they continue on. So, again, thank you for hearing us. We'll keep it short, but again, thank you for your support and patrolling. It's just been a big headache for our whole neighborhood.
Did you get it, Angelique? There we go. Go ahead.
Okay. It honestly has gotten to the point where I come home in tears because I get so scared just trying to pull in and out of my driveway from the cars that are speeding around me because they don't want to wait for me to pull in the driveway. When Terrence comes home, he always backs into the driveway. And I can't tell you guys the amount of times that we've had people just race around us. We have not been able to walk our dog since probably June because the first time that we tried after South End was closed, we almost got hit. And it's just not worth the risk. I get nervous going out to check the mail. I will stand at the end of my driveway with my arms out, like, why are you speeding? And people just swerve around, they don't care. So I really just wanted to say, it's scary, honestly, going out to our road, and I feel like almost every time I might get into an accident when I come home, especially now with it being dark and raining, it's just bad. So thank you guys for hearing our concerns.
Thank you. So Tori? We're just regular people too, so don't be nervous.
That kind of disarms a lot. Thank you again for hearing me and us. My name is Tori Weatherspoon. I live on Barker Avenue. I have lived there for many, many years since I was born, 1991. And I've just seen this shift as well, and just to echo my neighbors, which we don't even know each other, but yeah, I have 2 young children. My sons are 4 and 2, and I'm a runner, and one of our favorite kind of activities together is to like ride bikes and head out into, the world and from our house, and that feels intense, and I have to be really thoughtful about the time of day, and so my perspective is just, although I have a deep driveway, I still am very, very cautious and hesitant to even allow my children to be outside because, like my neighbors just said, they're just not following kind of these added safety precautions, whether that's speed humps or stop, speed limit signs. And so, again, just to echo what James said, my hope is just that there can be some added pieces to just slow traffic down. Because what is there now is just not honored with integrity. So again, thank you for hearing me.
Thank you.
Questions?
No, we're
Okay,
good.
cool.
Carrie?
Carrie Young, Oregon City. I live, work, and dream at 379 Barker Avenue, along with Kevin Deere, who owns the property. If you think of Barker Avenue in terms of an inverted bell curve, we reside at the very bottom of that curve where Coffee Creek runs under the road to the north through our backyard and yours. We're neighbors. The city of Oregon City owns a portion of the natural area on Barker. Kevin bought our home newly built in 1997, a stretch financially at the time as a single dad, but the neighborhood was worth the investment. His kids would be raised in an inspiring environment, same city where he was born and raised. My love story with our neighborhood is a bit different. My roots run with the trees, and this place had me singing over the hill and through the woods, coupled with grand visions for our outdoor space. But as it goes, grand visions don't always come true. This vision shifted once we learned 379 Barker is part of a Natural Resource Overlay District, NROD, as dictated by the city of Oregon City. That means our property is restricted. No backyard hot tub, be mindful of plants and trees, no patio, no shed, no lighting, and no fence to soothe road traffic. While these restrictions encumbered our property, the journey to acceptance and the enjoyment of letting nature be shaped who I am today and how we experience life in Oregon City. If you're unfamiliar with the NROD, it protects the habitats and associated functions of streams, riparian corridors, and wildlife habitat. These areas provide important benefits from wildlife habitat to recreation. It's important to protect these areas so that future generations will continue to enjoy and benefit from them. Benefit we do. Barker Avenue, until recently, was a street decorated with vitality. You could hear birds, water, squirrels, ducks, wildlife, walkers, joggers, bike riders, kids on skateboards and sleds. Fit people doing hill workouts, kiddie field trips to the creek, dads walking their dogs, neighbors restoring the intrinsic character of our street sidelined from the 2021 ice storm. The heat wave, we rigged up sun umbrellas to shade young western red cedars. Barker Avenue gives people a place to breathe clean air, move, reflect, and connect with nature, neighbors, and corridors that lead to Main Street best served by foot, an appreciation observed by slowing down, which is sad in a way because our world is now a mini highway. Worse, an on-ramp of sleep-depriving and focus-stripping sounds of noisy vehicles pacing through stop signs along the bottom curve, our riparian habitat. They grease up our roadway, throw trash, pollute Coffee Creek, and then gun it up the hill. These cars have no interest in our well-being, nor do they care to abide by city traffic signs that forbid pass-through traffic. I feel bound to ask the city, won't you be a good neighbor, a steward of the land? Please take stock in your assets and protect Barker Avenue from this traffic so we can be able to pull out of our driveway and safely and feel safe and solid about our property investment. Let us and neighboring residents enjoy a healthy lifestyle and realize the benefits from nature in our neighborhood. Thank you for your consideration and your service. And thank you, too, for policing the street.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lewis, would it be possible for you to come up and give us sort of a quick update on anything beyond the article that was in the paper about the county? And is the county fully aware of all of this situation that's been going on? I'm assuming that the majority of the traffic is people passing through. They're not actually going to Barker Avenue or going to any of the side streets. They're using it as a cut through.
That was a mouthful. Let me try.
Yeah.
So the first part was about the county's project. It's my understanding that the county's project has been delayed. Their intention was to open that before Thanksgiving to at least flag traffic, right? Weather and just the complexity of the project. The good news is the hard part of that project is done. I haven't reached out to the county lately, but I heard the last news that you heard, which was at the end of January, they were going to have that open, and my understanding was they were going to have the project complete. Again, weather dependent, because a lot of that finish work is a challenge to do in weather like what we're predicted to have, or even a little bit better than what we're predicted to have in the next couple days. So we can look into, again, reaching out. We do. There's probably others in the office that are more familiar with the exact status of that than I am right now, but we can get back to you on that. I was very hopeful, based on that article, that they would have it completely done by the end of January. Still am.
So Barker, is it a collector street or is it a local street?
Not a local street. It is a neighborhood collector street. So it's not an arterial like South End or Telford, but it is a neighborhood collector. So I agree with the neighborhood and the folks that live along there. This has been it's been frustrating for staff. You know, we don't live there, but we have heard from the community pretty regularly, whether it be, you know, trying to patrol that area for running stop signs or speeding, or just the volume. And I think it really is about the volume. So we have done everything from, we've kind of limited it to local access only. There's multiple flags on the signs, just kind of, we put the signage also out on Telford just so that people wouldn't, you know, so that it would be a little easier for the police to enforce that, because there was advanced warning signage, as opposed to keeping it, you know, 100 feet off of Telford where they were turning onto it, and then their position could be, well, I didn't know. These people know. They're you know, the feelings we've heard from them have been, it's public right away, I've got access to that. And I'll let Jim kind of respond to ability to enforce that, but they've been very bullish about this, and even to the extent that, we've got barricades and signs out at South End and Warner Parrott. We're either continually trying to move them back into place, people just take them off and they'll pull them to the side of the road. That's the mentality of the folks that we're dealing with through there. So it's been a challenge. From Public Works perspective, there's a few things we can do. We wouldn't advocate for adding stop signs in there, but the speed humps were a really good solution. I want to thank the Transportation Advisory Committee for hearing the concern and working with staff and making a recommendation to go ahead and put those speed humps in temporarily. The idea is we've purchased 3 temporary speed humps, and the idea is that because that street doesn't really meet the doesn't meet the requirements for speed humps as published, our speed hump policy, but given the fact that this is a temporary situation, we made the exception here. And so we let the neighborhood know that. We put those 3 speed humps in with signs and everything that goes along with them. And the intention is to leave them there throughout the construction of the South End Road project, and sometime thereafter, remove those speed humps. So I don't know, Jim, you got anything to add to that in terms of patrol? They don't give me a gun, so I can't.
Well, I have one, and I can't fix the problem. So everything those folks have said is true. The first time you and I met, I was driving through trying to get an eyeball on things. It's one of the most challenging things is not only have we gotten complaints from people who live there, we've gotten complaints from people who live close by or people who are taking their kids up to school and want to go through the neighborhood. So I literally one day had a fairly upset person who lived on Barker calling me, and I also had a message, so I went from that to somebody who lived just outside of the neighborhood, but right off of South End, who was furious because she'd just been cited for driving through Barker, and how else am I supposed to go to my house? We've had a lot of people concerned, and I only say this from the aspect of wanting this project to be done because these folks on Barker are bearing the brunt, and then there's a lot of other people who are angry too, mostly people who are getting citations. I operated under the same information that I knew the project had been delayed, and when you said mid-2023, I hope that's not true, because our understanding was November, and in fact today Sean and I drove to Canby, and somebody had pulled the road closed sign off, and we drove down there because we thought, oh my gosh, it's done. So we're hoping that it was January. I thought things had calmed down because I thought we were close. What we have done from the verbiage on the signs to make sure that those were going to work inside court, it is different when you're posting signs what verbiage means. What is the definition of through traffic? Is through traffic just somebody who lives on Barker, or is it somebody who's taking their kid to McLaughlin School? Which, these are what a lot of people who are going through there. There's also, they're right, there's trucks, there's delivery trucks, there's Amazon trucks, and at least now when you look on the map, it reflects that South End is closed. For a long time it didn't, so if you're a Amazon driver and you're trying to figure out where to go, so it is absolutely challenging. We've had blitzes with cops from a bunch of jurisdictions. We've posted overtime just for officers to go over there and enforce, which I can't think of another time we've done that for a neighborhood. We have done a lot, but we have not been able to fix the problem. And everything you folks are saying is absolutely true. So I had not heard. We're gonna do another blitz. But, and then I think the best thing for us to do is to reach out to the county and figure out is this January date, because to my knowledge, that was an extension and it was supposed to be done, and we were looking forward to that for you folks.
Anything else?
Gentlemen?
I guess all I wanted to hear is that we've exhausted every possible means of mechanically controlling traffic, putting devices in there. I don't care if they're temporary. It sounds like Mr. Lewis stated that. I don't know if there's any other items we can do in addition to that, understanding this is a temporary situation. I wanted to hear from the chief about enforcement efforts, and he's talked about a focused enforcement effort. Even I'm not sure where you go from there.
I think we can do, had I known this was still to this degree, we can do more enforcement. We can do more blitzes. What we've seen is when we're there, everyone's fine, and the next day, they're not. I think I might have said to you, I could probably post a cop here 24/7. We could probably do that. The judge has actually really responded. We had communication, because we weren't sure that these citations, it's a little gray. We weren't sure, we had to make sure our bases were covered, that when people were actually cited and going into court, that it was actually going to meet the bar, and it did. We've kind of dotted that I and crossed that T, but we'll do those two things, figure out a deadline, get more secure information from them, and you'll see some more black and whites doing some blitzes in there in the near future.
Do we have any signage that says that something about traffic laws will be enforced, or I don't know. But what I found frustrating when I drove through, and I just went up to one end and then turned around and came back, was I saw what James was talking about, cars going right down the middle of the street. I mean, I know there's no, dotted line, but it was just like, the fear that you have that somebody's coming at an excess of 35 miles an hour towards you, and I'm pulled over to the side of the road as far as I can get over, and so I couldn't understand why those speed humps weren't longer. I know that there's got to be, the ones that are permanent, there's a space where the fire truck can, go through, there's a little indent, but that's what I saw.
Actually, in Oregon City,
they're driving right down the middle of the street.
In Oregon City, our speed humps are full length. So yeah, that is an issue. These are standard built, and spacing on them, we tried to space them such that the main piece would be centered in the travel lane, so they don't do that. But they're basically speed cushions is what those are called, and there's 3 of them, and we centered the center one, and they're just not long enough on those. But those are a standard fabricated
but
product.
If they were permanent, they would be going from in the right-of-way all the way across.
That's our standard.
That's our standard.
Chair.
Go right ahead.
I heard Chief Band's commitment to do everything he can and actually accelerate the enforcement effort. For Mr. Lewis, have you exhausted all possibilities to mechanically control traffic?
We can bolster the closure notice at South End and Warner Parrott. We could do something a little more permanent as opposed to a barricade-mounted kind of barricade in the road. And we can actually require that of the county's project team to do as opposed to our own forces. But, signage-wise.
What did you say, John, about what the county could do? You would ask the county to do what?
We would ask them to bolster the kind of barricade and the kind of road closed ahead noticing at that location, because it has slipped for sure, and it's easily moved. So we can make that a more difficult thing to move. I don't want it to become a liability either, but yeah, we can do that. And we can check in with the county and just see what can be done to accelerate it, but it is weather-dependent work, so.
So is the addition of stop signs, is that?
Did they put a temporary one?
Yeah, I mean, is that, are we solving one problem and creating another elsewhere, or can we put them in for a period of time to slow down the speed, and are we causing another problem by putting them in? I mean, nothing legally prohibits us from
We
putting
could do
them in.
barricade-mounted stop signs. I'm not sure how effective they'll be, but especially if Jim will enforce the stop requirements on those, so we can talk to police about whether that would be an enforceable device. It's not warranted long-term, but again, for the temporary solution, we can talk about that.
Well, it gives enforcement an opportunity to, if you roll through a stop sign, it's cut and dry. So what's your thoughts there, Chief?
Yeah, thinking about it, the challenge of this is a lot of people who are taking their kids to school or whatever. I mean, there's the plus and the minus of enforcement, because people who are flagrantly violating some things, I don't have a whole lot of patience for what they're doing. I understand, even though I may disagree with some of the people who are complaining about not being able to go through there, I at least understand why somebody who lives a block off of that on South End is calling, going, this is ridiculous, why can't I drive through here? So it's frustrating for us on that level. I think as I'm sitting here thinking, is two things. I think if you're speaking for the neighborhood, you and I have talked before, I think us checking in regularly, so if it's not going well. The last I had really heard is, as soon as the speed bumps went in, I stopped really hearing anything, and I thought, man, those things must have worked. So one, I think if we're just checking in, and then the other thing, instead of doing a whole bunch of cops for a week, if there's more of a constant presence that we're communicating about in times, I think that might have more impact if people going through there. But then on the flip side, I'm sounding rambling here, some of the people going through there in these trucks, I think aren't going through all the time. I think some of these are one-off Amazon drivers, and I've seen people delivering furniture, or, they're not people who are always going through. I'm sure that may be an exception, but anyway, we'll put our heads together. You and I will talk. And I think the enforcement piece is probably going to be more able to address this than if we add more signs. There's already signs that say they're not supposed to go there. So let us get to work on that, and we can report back to you.
What is the primary issue? Is it speed, or driving on the wrong side of the road, or careless, or drive, or all the above? Or
All of the above.
does one of those rate higher than the other? Speed.
Not stopping at the stop signs.
Okay.
He naturally got it. Accelerate.
Yeah, okay. I used to despise it, but it makes me miss photo radar. When that light flashes, man.
We can't pick up anything you're saying if you're talking from the audience. So, Mr. Morrow, you had something?
Well, I was just going to ask the same thing that Commissioner O'Donnell did about the potential of temporary stop signs. But I was curious, the first speaker asked about a stop sign, and where was that location proposed?
Woodlawn. We had a map up a moment ago.
I think she can get it
for those
back
who are
up.
not familiar with the road.
Hang on, she can get it back up real quick. Or at least feasibly quick. Okay.
Barker Avenue is a half mile. The eastern end, the western end is South End, and Telford is the east end of that half mile. It continues on, that same road continues on east, but under a new name called Sharman. On that road, which goes from Telford to Lynn, it is another half mile. There are only 2 intersections on that stretch. Both of those intersections have stop signs on them. So that same continuation of the road, traffic is managed with stop signs. So the reason we were asking for stop signs is to have the same sort of traffic intervention at Barker Road and at, I'm blanking on the name of the other street.
You want Woodlawn?
Woodlawn, so that there is forced stop on that same half-mile stretch. That's why we were asking for stop signs.
I wondered if you could put in a no right or left turn at certain hours of the day off of those mains onto that.
Off of which
Oh,
street?
never mind, that wouldn't work. It was just,
I would like to comment on the South End project itself. So I've personally spoken with the project manager and the assistant project manager about the schedule, and having walked down that road, about the just to view, and this was probably 2 months ago, to view the performance of the project itself. That's when I was informed that it would be delayed, but I also was asking about literally 100 yards uphill where there is significant road erosion. There's a drop-off still of pavement, drops down 2 or 3 inches and goes over. I said, is that going to be repaired as well? Because you're fixing one part of South End, but you're not addressing what is another potential slide further uphill. And he said, no, we only had the money, the FEMA money, to do the work that's related to the Coffee Creek area. I said, what do we need to do to make sure that the project gets done completely and correctly? And he said, let me get back to you. He said, we'll figure out a way to do it, but it will take another 12 months after this project gets done, and there will be intermittent closures while we continue to work. So when I said in the middle of 2023, that's based on that discussion that I had with them.
With the project engineer?
Yes. And that just means that road will have ongoing closures while they're doing work there. And Center Street, for those of you that have driven on Center Street, it will require repair as well. And that, just the same traffic that we're experiencing now will just be exacerbated while all of that construction is going.
Well, I thank you, James.
Thank you.
Is there an option to put a temporary stop sign at Woodlawn to see if it makes any difference?
I believe there's enough for us to write tickets for. I guess it is. I don't think the problems. I don't think we need more. I mean, if we put another, I'm not a traffic engineer, but if you put a bunch of stop signs on there, and people are already blowing the one stop sign that's there, they're going to blow all 3 of them. So I guess what I would say is, let us go start citing people who are blowing one. And I mean, maybe that's where my brain's at, because I think there's plenty for us to cite about.
Well, I had to ask. I mean, I know that isn't totally the solution, but we have a lot of streets that are similar to Barker where it's continuous and people, use them. And again, I can't really say whether these are local residents that are there or, these are people passing through. Have we put any traffic counters on Barker to see what the heck's going on? Do we have a traffic counter on Barker already? Yes, he's saying yes, we have a traffic counter on Barker, so that's obviously going to tell us something. Go right ahead.
To me, the goal of this additional stop signs is not to promote opportunities to write tickets, is to break this, to prevent long accelerations. So I'm actually in favor of a temporary stop sign.
I just thought, well, we could try to see if it makes any difference because it would break the street up to a point to where they're not just blowing through, and that's part of the problem.
I should maybe have rephrased that.
That's all right. That's okay.
It's more an opportunity to change driving behaviors, because that's what we're really trying to do. And I have heard presentations before. I think generally, John could speak to this, I think generally they don't try to use stop signs to control speed.
I have the Nancy Crash Hour speech in my head when we were told that we couldn't put stop signs at the intersection at the library, the church, the senior center. There are 4 stop signs there now because there's a heavy pedestrian access. I mean, this is not the same as that, but I mean, sometimes there are exceptions. We're not going to solve this problem tonight, so we'd appreciate staff getting back to us at least by our first meeting in January, so we can see what we can do to help alleviate this, because it's looks like we've got an undue burden of not normal, routine and ordinary traffic coming through there. And like I said, the only thing I observed, and I need to go back again, so I was telling James, I said, so if you see a slow-moving white car, that's probably me. I'm not cutting through, I'm just observing. So, and I saw people just, like I said, go down the middle of the street, which freaked me out, so. Okay, thank you so much. We will get back to you. Our number one concern, we probably need to talk to the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee, our Traffic Advisory Committee about this as well. All right, so we have a number of items on our consent agenda. Is there any one item or do we want, is there anything that needs to be pulled off, or do we want to go ahead and approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, it's been moved.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Mitchell we approve the consent agenda. I think we were all delighted to see the additional parking kiosk replacement per commission request on that agenda so that we can get some more going on. And then we have the certification of the election results. We don't need to read that resolution, do we? If we do it on consent, we can just wave our wand? Okay. All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Rocky Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Morrow?
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell?
Aye.
Mayor Denise McGriff?
Aye.
Motion
All right, and I see Mr. Zook has taken his place at the table because we're now on to public hearings. We have resolution number 22-38, supplemental budget for the 2021-23 biennium.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm, first of all, disappointed that all these people weren't here for this item on the agenda.
And
Thought
nobody
that
was
was
here
the
for your
case.
item?
Yeah, but
Would you like us to call them back in?
No, that's fine, thank you, though. The thought. This evening, we are here to present to you conditions unknown at the time that we did the budget about a year and a half ago, and things do change throughout 2 years, and there is a short laundry list of about 6 items, probably the most notable of which is the ARPA funding reallocation, which you just recently approved the uses for. So this the supplemental budget takes care of those items as well as some other pass-through items. City collects money for Metro and other revenues that go to the state, and we don't always anticipate the level of that activity, and so we're including that in this change. There's an elevator services contract that you just approved the last month that had an escalator that was not included in the original budget. And then finally, our vehicle maintenance department charges out for all the work they do, and the levels that we put into the budget were the level of activity is actually higher than what we anticipated, so that's usually a guess at that point, but as you know, different aging vehicles require different levels of service and such. So tonight, this is being presented to you. There's more detail in the resolution and Exhibit A, and this evening we're asking that this be approved by the Commission.
Are there any questions of Mr. Zook? Right ahead.
Is there a necessary timeline that we have to do this by? And also, is there a limit to how many times we adjust the budget?
The answer to the first question is no, there's no specific time other than we need to do it before we spend the money. Now, in the case of a couple of these items, I believe the emergency work on the police, the servers in the police room, that money was incurred before we actually increased the budget. That was I say about 90% was recovered by the city through the architect. So other than that, there is no legal time frame that we do these on a regular basis, nor is there a limit, although we practice reducing those as much as we can. We don't want to come to you for every little thing, and that's the benefit of doing a 2-year budget, is that we have a large enough appropriation that we have some wiggle room for most of this. But most of the items on this are being presented to you in anticipation of going over budget.
So I don't have any issues with this. However, I did ask a month or so ago about the possibility of this commission having a conversation about the economic development strategic plan, which has never been approved by this commission, and a possibility at when the new commission takes office, which is essentially now, but would be the first of the year, that we have a conversation about the successes or lack thereof in some cases of the strategic plan and the possibility of readjusting the budget. I would still like to have that conversation as a new commission. My question then is, if we adjust the budget now, do we do it again if that warrants it, if we have that conversation, or do we just wait? But it sounds like some of these need to go forward now.
Yes.
Anyway, I want to remind that this commission at least seemed to be open to having a conversation about revisiting the strategic plan and budget for economic development.
I think Commissioner Smith, if we have the consensus or if we have agreement to do that, we can do that. So I guess the only way we're going to find that out is we hear from everyone. I think we need to get this one done now and take care of the needs that we have, but put that on a high priority for our first meeting in January. I'd like to see us just get it done sooner than later. So you're okay with the first meeting in January?
Whenever.
Mr. Mitchell?
I agree we need to move forward with these, and I agree we need to review that economic development plan at the soonest possible date.
Tomorrow?
Agreed.
Mr. O'Donnell?
I concur with Mr. Mitchell.
Then I will move to...
Prior to that motion, I would note it's listed as a public hearing.
Right, it is. So hang on.
Sorry.
I'm just getting concurrent. So, Mr. Conkle, is there anything else we need to do with this particular Resolution 2238 other than just pass a motion, and then we can go back to the second part of the question? So, we have a motion and a second to approve.
Open the public hearing.
Yes,
close the public
yes.
hearing.
So that's why I said we have a motion and a second, but I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. So I'm opening the public hearing on Resolution 2238, supplemental budget. And so everybody that's just excited about this whole thing, come on up and give us your testimony. And seeing that we have no one here, unless Mr. Zook is going to say something in opposition to his own proposed budget. He's going to take both sides of the aisle. He's going to do the pro and the con.
Come on.
Okay, so seeing that we have no citizen comment or comment in general, I'm going to close the public hearing. Now we have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2238, supplemental budget for 2021-23 biennium.
Commissioner Rocky Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Morrow?
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell?
Aye.
Mayor Denise McGriff?
Aye.
Motion passes.
So putting on your crystal ball, do we have some wiggle room on the January 4th agenda to begin the conversation?
So what we had planned, based on the conversation at the last work session, which identified the 4 things to bring back, 3 of them in January or February, was that we were going to have an update on parks fees on January 4th. There were multiple items going on the work session on January 10th, which included the requested charter parks update. And then the February 7th work session included economic development strategy and the code enforcement complaint process. So at the work session last week, we had identified the charter parks, the economic development strategy, and the code enforcement complaint process were the 3 that were prioritized for January and February, but then there was also a discussion about wanting to revisit the park fees. So we put the park fees on the first meeting in January. The first work session in January includes city seal, sanitary service improvement, laterals, street tree, charter parks, restroom. And then the February work session is street design standards, ECDEV strategy, and code enforcement complaint process.
Maybe we need to adjust that a little bit.
To throw another thing in the discussion, part of my reasoning there's a lot of things going on, but in terms of the conversation with economic development, I think that conversation about the strategic plan and the possible adjustment of the budget should also consider what the plan is moving forward with filling a vacancy in tourism or not, or how that process is going to move forward. I think that also needs to be a conversation.
Okay, well, what do you want to throw off of that January work session, if we want to have that discussion?
Well,
because we can't do all of that stuff, and I'm not going to recommend that we do that.
The parks thing has been, delayed for years. This strategic development, or the strategic plan has been delayed a year and a half. I would like to take anything to the top of the list that we've been sitting on for over 2 years.
Well, maybe let's just take
or a
those.
year and a half.
Could we just take those two? I think that's plenty.
Those, yeah. I mean, they all need to be dealt with.
Well, I agree, but we only have so much capacity
I know that.
in our brains, and, too much stuff, and then we're going to go completely crazy.
So the direction of the commission is that the January work session will just be charter parks and economic development strategy. We will push city seal, sanitary sewer
City seal can
improvement
get pushed.
program for laterals, street code, and downtown public restroom.
Right. Okay, all right.
Okay.
We're waving the wand. All right, we're done, Mr. Zook. Take you and your entourage, and you can go to the back of the room now.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda, we have 9B, second reading of ordinance number 22-1009, replacing the Oregon City Comprehensive Plan and changing it to the OC 2040 Plan, legislative file 22-00003.
I do not have a presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments. But, yep, it's the second reading of the ordinance, so.
Well, I just want to acknowledge all the work that's been put into this, and I'm very excited that we're finally at this point. I was wondering if we are going to get like printed bound copies of this. I think that would be helpful for me to have on hand.
We can do that, yeah.
Okay.
There will be a test, so please memorize it.
Yes.
Does each commissioner want a bound copy, a hard copy?
I turned in my old ones that I got.
Okay, we'll order a couple.
Mike says yes. Adam says yes. Apparently, yes.
Okay.
Okay. So I need to open the public hearing. I will open the public hearing on file LE 22-00003, and I think the same multitude and throngs are here for this item as they were for the previous budget item. So seeing that there is no one here to testify about this, we will close the public hearing. Is there deliberation or is there a motion?
I move to approve the second reading of ordinance 22-1009, adopting a new comprehensive plan, OC 2040.
And I'm going to second it.
Ordinance number 22-1009, an ordinance of the City of Oregon City adopting a new comprehensive plan by repealing the 2004 comprehensive plan and replacing it with OC 2040 comprehensive plan map, Oregon City Urban Reserves map, and ancillary documents.
All right, let's have the roll call.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Abstain.
Commissioner Adam Morrill,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Abstain.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell,
Aye.
Mayor Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I know it's probably not polite, but why are we abstaining?
I abstained on the first reading because I don't support it.
Okay, that's fine. I remember that. I think Mr. O'Donnell supported it.
I think so.
It's a lot of work that went into this, as Commissioner Morrill has previously stated, and we have gotten basically to the finish line. So have we submitted this to, will we be submitting this to the LCD, or they already have it?
After final adoption, it should be submitted under the PAPA, the Post Acknowledgement Plan Amendment. So yeah, DLCD will be getting a copy.
So we can check that box off. All right. Thank you, staff, for all the work on this particular project, and our consultants. As I said last time, it was pretty amazing and, in my opinion, historic for Oregon City, not to use that word lightly, but we involved people in this process that have never been involved before, and we got a lot of great feedback, which I think now it's on to implementation and getting everything right that we talked about. All right, general communications.
I think the only update that I have for tonight is just hopefully folks are paying attention to the weather. We fully anticipate that if these weather assessments are accurate, that beginning tomorrow afternoon, probably sometime between 2 and 6, we're going to move into maybe a light snow, but transitioning quickly to freezing rain, which means we are potentially going to have significant amount of ice with continuing freezing rain through the night and the majority of Friday. We'll do our best. We're out de-icing, but once it goes to ice, recommend you stay home or have spike tires. So just want to make you aware. We're aware. We're out there trying to get ahead of it. I do anticipate that if these predictions do come through, we will be shutting down the city. If we have ice all throughout the region, it's going to be near impossible to move around until that starts to break up. That's the only update I have for you tonight.
The team has been meeting.
Yes.
Anything else?
That's all I have for
understand
tonight.
that we might have some good news on the HR front from Mr. Foyles. We have a contract?
Oh. We have a tentative agreement. We're awaiting
Okay, that's better.
confirmation from the
Good.
union as
Thank
well as the commission.
Thank you. Gentlemen, any closing remarks? This is our last meeting of the year.
See you next time.
I have one minor thing. I just wrote some notes up to myself, but I want to, on behalf of the commission and on behalf of myself, I want to thank everybody in the city of Oregon City, whether you're a property owner, renter, business owner, thank you for helping make this city as amazing as I think it is, which it is. And as you know, on the Skidmore Fountain, one of my favorite sayings is that citizens are the riches of the city, and our citizens indeed provide riches for our city. So whether you're involved or not in what we do here in Oregon City, please know that we appreciate you and each and every one of you. And for the community, my door proverbially is open, so please call me if you have concerns or nice things to say too. And in closing, on this solstice day, please be kind to each other. It costs nothing to be kind, but it may mean the world to someone else. So thank you on behalf of the city, and thank you staff for all your work. It is much appreciated. So this meeting is adjourned.